Hello and welcome to the Global Travel Channel podcast show. I'm your host, Mark Philpott, and if you are a regular listener to my show, welcome back. It's great to have you with us again. If this is your first time listening, welcome. It's great to have you here. And if you want to check out all of our previous episodes, just head on over to the website at www.globaltravelchannel.com, and there you'll find a whole list of episodes that we've done previously. Now the good news is you can download them and listen to them in your own free time, so you can find them on places like iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Play, and a host of other locations that are listed there on our website. We also have a Patreon page, and we list all of our episodes there on our Patreon page for you to have a listen to as well. Now, to keep the trend going with amazing guests on my show today, my guest is another incredible human being who has traveled a lot of his life. And he's done that as a filmmaker and documentary maker, and an incredibly good one at that. So it's a very warm welcome today to the Global Travel Channel podcast show to Mr. Michael Campo. Michael, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Mark. Really appreciate it.
Today, man, you're coming into Christmas Eve tomorrow.
Christmas Eve. Yes, I know. I'm married with 3 children, so Christmas has been coming for the last 3 months.
You're a busy man, so I really appreciate you taking your time out to have a chat to me today. And I wanted to say one thing to you before we got started, because you'll be very familiar with this line: one choice can change your life forever.
Very familiar.
Very familiar?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you chose to be on my show today, so for me that's made things exceptionally good. So I want to just pass on my gratitude and appreciation for that.
Oh, well, thank you, man. I'm super grateful just for being on the show. I love the stuff that you're doing, so thank you for having me.
Terrific. Now, as you might know, I dedicate every episode, or allow my guests to dedicate the episode to someone that's very special in their life. So who would you like to dedicate your show to today?
Oh, man, I've been thinking about this, and I'm going to dedicate it to my wife. Why not?
Fantastic. What's your wife's name?
My wife's name is Susanna.
Susanna. Okay. Well, that's a very special Christmas gift from you to Susanna today, and you guys will be able to listen to this forever. So it's always going to be something that you can share. So that's really beautiful. Thanks for doing that.
Thank you. Pressure's on now,
huh? Yeah. Let's ramp it up from here. I wanted to start the show today by sharing the story behind how I actually got connected to you, and it's a story that you don't even know. So I'm really interested to see what you think of this.
I love this.
It was back in 2007, actually, and I was living in Singapore at the time, working for DHL, the big yellow logistics company that I used to work for. And I was sitting at home one night, and I was just surfing on YouTube, and I came across the trailer for The Human Experience. And I tell you, in those 2.5 or 3 minutes or whatever it is of the trailer, it just really had a huge impact on me. I was in a really down part of my life journey, and I was getting to that stage as a corporate guy that I was feeling as though, is this what life is all about? Like, what legacy am I going to live? I haven't got a family or children, and I'm just meandering through this corporate journey. And that trailer had such an impact on me. And it was a year later, actually, that I started my own not-for-profit organization called Humaneity, based in Singapore, and started a completely new life journey. So I would really like to say that, coming across The Human Experience and watching that documentary film was part of the catalyst that changed my life. So thank you very much. And now you know it. You know how I actually got connected.
Super honored. I have not heard that story before, so it's pretty amazing. The power of this thing called the internet, right?
It is, and when I watched The Human Experience, I kind of thought to myself, gosh, I wish every human being on the planet could watch this film, because it's such heart-wrenching, honest transparency of humanity. It's like I'd never seen let's say this way, I hadn't seen anything or felt anything that had connected to me so strong. So we're going to have a little bit of a chat about that today, but I really want to talk to you about, traveling the world and filming humanity, not just for The Human Experience, and also a ton of other stuff, because I want to talk about also what you're doing today and what difference that's making in the world. So let's start off in New York City. Is that where you are tonight? Tampa, Florida. Okay. Well, where are you actually originally
Tampa,
from?
Florida. Oh, that's a tough one. You know, I've moved around quite a bit as a kid, mostly all throughout New York. The longest I ever lived in one place was a
Yeah,
small
yeah,
town
real
called
small.
Brooklyn, New York. Uh, and then I met my wife, and
Mm.
we got married and moved out to a place called Long Island. And yeah, we lived in Long Island for a couple of years of our marriage, and then just about 5 months
Oh, okay.
ago,
So it's a fairly
we
recent
moved
transition in your
down to
life, yeah?
Tampa, Florida. Super new,
I
yeah. I'm
wanted
a
to have a
rookie.
quick chat
I'm a
about New
rookie to
York
this whole
City
Florida
because
thing.
we both know that there's probably no other place like it on the planet, and it's a place where humanity can be seen in all shapes and
Mm.
forms. Yeah, how was your life experience up to recently in New York City? What was it like being in that place?
Yeah, I loved it. I mean, you know, I'm a New Yorker through and through, so for me, it was, you know, it's just home. Um, you know, I think it's a great place. I've watched it change in the last 20 years, dramatically. You know, what it used to be and what it is today. To me, it's just two very different places. You know, I mean, back in the day, you know, Brooklyn was more of a neighborhood, and now Brooklyn's more of a
Yeah,
brand.
exactly.
You know, it's been completely changed, um, gentrified, and you know, and it's just it's a whole new world there. I mean, my pops still lives in Brooklyn,
Yep.
and you know, him and I are very close, and so we talk every single day. And you know, last time I went to go visit him was, I don't know, a month ago, and it was just like, man, it's like it just keeps changing. You know, it's like just keeps growing, keeps changing, and I guess that's a
Is it
good
a
thing. It's
tough
just
city to
it's
grow
not
up
the
in as a
same.
kid?
It's not the same Brooklyn that I remember. You know. Well, I didn't actually grow up
Mm,
in the city. I moved there when I was
okay.
18, and I lived there for 12 years. So my parents are divorced, and so I lived with my mom and my stepfather for, you know, that first
Mm.
half, and then
So how
when
is
I
it
was
as a
18, I moved
teenager
in
being
with
in
my
New York
pops and
City?
lived
It
in the
must be
city.
a real eye opener to all the sorts of things that are available for a kid of that age, yeah? Mm, mm.
Oh, I wanted it so bad too. Loved it. I mean, I couldn't wait to get there. And you know, when you're at that younger age and you're on fire and you have, like, you know, all that ambition, it really is a place that can inspire you and really empower you. You know, there's something really special about it, this liveliness to it, um, and I think that was one of the most attractive things, was just the spirit. You know, I mean, you walk through the city and there's just people, every different culture, every different color, every different language, every different religion, um, and it was just, you know, a very lively place. You know, it was really an important part of my growth, I would say.
It's got an energy and a vibe that no other place that I've been to on the planet yet has really got.
I would agree with that. I mean, I've
Mm.
traveled quite a bit myself, and I'm grateful for the cities and places I've had an opportunity to experience. But for me, I mean, there's only one. There's only one New York, you know.
Mm, mm. So when did filmmaking come into your life? As an 18-year-old in New York City, were you already into filmmaking? Was it a passion of yours at that age?
I had always liked to write. I love telling stories. That was something that I really loved. I was not a very good student in school, so you know, but I loved to write. That was my thing. And
Mm.
you know, when I moved to Brooklyn, it wasn't until 2006 where we actually started a company, myself and a group of young guys,
Mm.
and we created a film company. And so our first film that we did was a small Catholic film, and it was called Fishers of Men.
Yeah,
And
brilliant.
after that film, um, we really wanted to do something big, something special. And so, you know, one of the guys, you know, just had this idea of just live with the homeless people in New York City, across the Brooklyn Bridge, and live with the people in Manhattan. And
Mm.
so, you know, at first, yeah, oh, am I just going to make like a quick little short film? What are the homeless people? But man, once we sat down in front of that computer and started looking through that footage, we realized that we had something that was going to be much more than that.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, how did you guys get together? How did you find each other on your
So
journeys?
my dad actually runs a house called the St. Francis House in Greenpoint, Brooklyn. And so all of the guys who started the company came through that house.
So there were kids that were a bit lost in life, searching for something of meaning.
It was. There was, I mean, it was originally started back in 1967 by a Franciscan friar called Father Benedict Rochelle. My dad took it over in, I want to say 92. I want to say 92, around that time.
Mm.
And he took over the house, and he's been running it ever since. He's still running it today. But when I turned 18, I moved in there, and when I first got there, I mean, it was a halfway house. You had a lot of people coming. Some people came straight out of jail, some people coming out of rehab, a lot of group meetings. I mean, I learned a tremendous amount. I learned a lot from that house and from the guys there that I lived with. A lot of guys there had a lot of problems, and living and experiencing life with them every single day definitely teaches you quite a bit about life.
Was it intense?
Intense?
Mm.
Yeah, there were days where it was intense for sure.
Mm.
There were times where it was intense. Look, my dad ran the house. I had to face the fact that, like, I'm the director's son, right? And I'm living with these guys, and so you have to make sure that you kind of walk that fine line where, yeah, he's still my dad, but at the same time his house.
Yeah, right.
So it was a very fine line, but I learned a lot from it, and if anything, I think it made our relationship stronger than I think it could probably ever be, between a father and a son.
Yeah, I can imagine so, because you've got this third party element that's going on all the time, and that's all these other kids that are coming and going out of this transitional place. And I guess the common denominator through that process is the relationship you have with your father, right?
Yeah, and at first we weren't as tight as we are. I mean, my parents, I come from a divorced family. I lived with my mom, and I saw my dad from time to time, but we didn't have that closeness that I really, really desired. And so, when I said that I wanted to move into the house, he was very unsure about it, because he knew he knew the house that he was running, and here's his son moving in, right? So it was intense for sure, but then things kind of fell into place.
I watched your recent video podcast with your dad, and I'm going to put a link of it into the show notes here so people can watch it, because it's a fantastic.
Thanks so much.
It's a great conversation between a father and a son, and you should be really proud of it, both of you.
Thank you.
So back to writing. Did you have a role model that got you interested in writing, or is it just something you picked up from your life journey?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a ton of role models. I mean, even when I was younger, I don't know. I mean, look, I love playing basketball, so yeah, I mean, I was a huge New York Knicks fan, so, those kind of role models. I'm only 5'7", right, with shoes on, so I knew I wasn't going to be playing for the NBA. But I can't say that I had any real. I just love to write. I mean, I like people. I like talking. I like with people. I love talking about things and ideas, and I love feeding off of that. And when I don't have that opportunity to be, in a conversation with individuals, kind of exploring different things, I like to write. I love to write poetry. I love to write, scripts. I like to write scenes. Sometimes it's, two sentences. Sometimes it's pages, and that's just something that's always been inside of me, that even when I'm away from it for a certain amount of time, I can find myself just very easily, when things maybe are, a little hectic in my life, just sitting down quietly and just picking up that pen and just going, and it just kind of, it grounds me in a way. It's my way of grounding myself.
It's therapeutic.
It is. It's definitely therapeutic. Some of it, I share. A lot of it I don't. It just depends on the context of it and what it is, and who it's for.
Is it also part of your safety zone? It's where you feel the most comfortable?
No, because I would say that it's more of an unsafe zone. It's more of an uncomfortability, because I'm always thinking about, who's going to read this, and how does this sound, and oh my goodness, should I say that or not? So it's not safe at all. In fact, it's the opposite. But it's freeing for sure. Not being comfortable, not being in that safe zone is more freeing than the comfortability,
Do you write for others, or do you write for yourself?
Nope, just for myself. I mean, sometimes I'll post some things up. an article here, an article there, or something on Medium or something like that. But for the most part, I keep it for myself. I've been thinking a lot about putting it out there, but I don't want to. I don't know if I want to go there, expose myself.
Mm.
You know,
It's a big wide world out
it's a
there.
big wide world, man. Some random person in Singapore could see it on YouTube, and then who knows what's going to happen.
You could go and change another million people's lives, Michael.
I don't know. It's a
Yeah.
big responsibility, Mark.
Someone's got to do it, mate. Someone's got to do it. So getting back to the human experience and crossing that bridge and going to spend time with homeless people, where did the storyline evolve from there? How did you get these other elements that you built into it? Where did they come from? How did it become that creative
Well, we
story?
were sitting there and we were kind of looking at this footage and listening to some of the conversations that took place on camera, and kind of pulling from that. We saw that we had something special because the homeless people that we met. I mean, I believe that they were a gift from God. I mean, we could have ran into the most crazy people, right? Mental
Mm,
health is an issue on the streets, right? Addiction,
mm,
um,
mm.
prostitution. I mean, these are all very, very real factors for people who are homeless and struggling. And then there's some people who
Yep.
are just really down on their luck, who had an
Mm,
apartment, who lost their job, who don't have any family, and just could never get back on their feet.
yep.
So the guys who were out there actually on the street, living the experience, um, what they had actually brought back was something that was brilliant. And once I saw it, I knew that we had something that was going to be more than an 18-minute film. I knew it, you
Mm,
know.
mm,
So it was
mm.
really just a matter of kind of balancing it out and seeing how far we could go with it.
So where did the idea come from to, hop on a plane and go around the world and do the other elements of it?
Well, we knew that it had to be bigger. We knew that it had to
Mm.
be larger than life. We did not, we were, like we were young guys. I mean, wasn't married, no children, no debt. you know,
Yeah.
it was like we just knew that we wanted to create something that was going to affect people. We always had that in mind. There was a part of it of what we wanted to say that we knew we wanted to say, right?
Mm.
But there was this other element of this understanding of what we thought as young people that the audience needed to hear, and we focused a lot on that. And what was brilliant about that was allowing everybody that we met to just be free and say what they wanted to say. And all we did was talk about, I mean, all the only questions that we really asked people were, what is the meaning of life to you? What is your meaning of
Mm.
life? What is the
Mm.
purpose of life? Why are you here? Why do you think you're here? These big questions, and responses that we got, I mean, some were better than others, and some of them, I mean, honestly, the human experience could have been hours long. It could have been hours long with the amount of
Yeah.
footage that we captured.
I kind of got to that stage where I was disappointed that it ended. Like I was going, hang on, there's so much more to this, because when you actually ask that question, what is the meaning of life? It brings up so many different things. And as I said to you earlier, it was a catalyst in some parts to my own change in my journey. And I kept thinking back to, well, the reason I watched it is because I was at that stage where I was asking myself that question directly without actually knowing it. And I guess your film prompted that become more at the forefront of my mind and my consciousness. And when you do that, then it becomes a possibility to actually take action and make change,
Yeah,
right?
that's beautiful, man. It's amazing how
Mm.
it's just amazing, you put something out there and you never know who's going to see it or who's going to be touched by it. You hope for the best. I mean, you do it with good intentions, but you really never know how it's going to affect people.
So maybe by the end of this podcast show today, you're going to make a full-on commitment to put all your stuff out there to
Oh
change people's
boy, I don't
lives.
know.
How many of you actually got together and started working on that project? How many were part of the crew,
Oh,
so to
there were
speak?
five, no, five, six, seven. There were seven of us total.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and we we started out with the homeless piece, and then we had a group of surfers, an organization, a group of surfers who were traveling world surfing these big beautiful spots. One of the guys who lives with us, his brother was starting this surfers group, and they were going out, and part of their mission was to not only surf in these great beautiful places, but then to also spend some time working with people who actually live in these places, because a lot of these places where the surface like off the hook, it's impoverished,
Yeah.
right? So they volunteered some time. So they would go down for 2 weeks. They'd spend a week surfing and another week building houses or feeding the poor. And they hooked up with a guy called Dr. Tony. And Dr. Tony was a guy in Peru, Lima, Peru, and he ran an orphanage. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
he was a brilliant doctor who ran an orphanage, and he felt that this was his calling, that this is what God wanted him to do. I mean, he could have worked in any hospital, making millions of
Yeah.
dollars, buying huge houses, nice cars, and all that. But he even says
Mm-hmm.
it in the film. You know, he had some of these things, and he was on his way to that, but he couldn't turn his back on what he believed he was called to do, which was help these poor children who were not receiving the care that they needed. And as a doctor, he felt it was his responsibility.
Yeah. Isn't it amazing when you put the whole energy of what you want to achieve through this filmmaking process out there, and it just connects you to the right people? Isn't that incredible?
You know, listen, I'm a faith guy. I think that God has a lot to do with it. I believe that I pray to be an instrument for His will, this kind of stuff. So,
Mm. Mm.
as awesome and surprising as it is, it's also, I believe that my prayers are being answered. I believe
Mm.
he's giving
Mm.
me some skill and some talent to actually get out there and do it, and he kind of connects me with the right people at the right times.
I'm really into knowing also what change you saw in the guys that you were with during this process, like all these different places that you went to and you filmed in and you got this content. There were such heart-wrenching stories attached to most of those things, or all of them, not most of them, but all of them. It must have had a emotional, spiritual, and physical impact on you guys. Did it? Did it do that? And did you see that change in the other guys as
Of
well?
course. Look, when we had our two guys that were out there living with the homeless people, they didn't just say they were living it. They really lived it. They really slept in the
Mm.
cardboard boxes. They really begged for food. They really went to shelters to eat, shelters, stayed on the train to get warm, sleeping on church steps. Like they really lived it. And when they came back from that experience, I mean, yeah, they didn't shower for some time, and they were begging, and they came home, and it was like, well, you guys want to go out and get a cheeseburger, and it was for them, I think, seeing through their eyes at that moment exactly what they had experienced, you know, having to beg for food, and begging for food is two things, right? It's like there's the one issue of like being hungry, right? So you need to eat, but then there's
Mm.
the other
Mm.
piece of it, which is we're all human beings. Nobody wants to beg. I have a problem asking people for directions
Yeah.
or help,
Yeah.
with something I need in my house, right? Like,
Mm.
as especially I think for men. I mean, I think sometimes that's challenging for us to ask for help. Now,
Mm.
you're hungry and you have to ask for help, and then that pride of actually having to depend on someone else's generosity, whether you will eat or not. It's a very, very awakening experience.
Do you think it's something that if more people got connected to actually doing it, they would have a better appreciation of the challenges and struggles that these people, and you mentioned earlier in the show about a lot of these people, they don't ask to be in this situation in life. Their journey of life has brought them to this particular crossroads, and they're
Absolutely.
they're there through a whole lot of reasons. So how do we, the audience that's sitting there looking at this compelling content, how do we go beyond just the social conscious thinking about it? How do we actually move into that space of compassion and actually making a change and making something different?
Look, people they have to be aware of their surroundings.
Mm.
They have to want it. They have to get out there. They have to, we need to have a sense of gratitude. If people woke up every day, and instead of approaching that first minute when your eyes open up and you leave the state of being in the dream,
Mm.
and you come back into the real world, what is that first thought? Is it, what do I have to do next? Is it my kids, my husband, wife? What are those first thoughts? When you're in a situation like that, being homeless, your first thoughts are warmth, food, right? The basics,
Mm. Yep.
shelter. Where am I going to sleep at night? When I go to sleep again, where am I going to get my first meal? Those are very, very sobering thoughts, and everything else is extra. We live in a place right now of excessiveness. I'm not preaching. I'm guilty of it too. You know what I mean? Let's put that out there
Mm-hmm.
straight up. Like, I'm married. I got kids. Like, Christmas is coming up. Like, I get it. I'm there too. But we live in this excessiveness where we have so much that it's it's challenging sometimes to understand the real true essence of like the gratitude for the things that we take for granted that other people don't have. Um, so I think that,
Mm.
number one, people have to want to get there. But I think that there's a shift right now happening. It's amazing. I'm seeing a lot of people in business and in other aspects of life where they are kind of getting to a place in their life where they're like, you know what, this ain't what it's all cracked up to be. You know, they're sensing the lie.
Mm.
The lie
Mm.
is that you have to go to college, you have to get a good job, you have to make a ton of money, you have to drive a Mercedes, you have to buy fancy clothes, you've got to live on Park Avenue. It's not making a million, you should be making a billion. Like this idea, you
Mm.
have to look like this, you have to dress like this, you have to be perfect, you have to be sexy, you have to be like all of these things like strip away the essence of what makes us a human being. What makes us a human being is the fact that we're all very different, but the fact that we're also all connected because we're human beings. There's no other animal on the planet like us.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Uh,
thank goodness. Yeah,
thank goodness, right?
yeah, thank goodness.
But but that
Yeah,
understanding of
yeah.
self is something that's very, very unique. The awareness of who we are and what we can do and what we're capable of and what we'll do tomorrow and next week, right? This understanding of time. I mean, it's just not the
Mm.
same. So, but I feel that people are sensing the lie. They're understanding. I think we're getting to a place in life right now where I'm seeing more and more people who they're not interested in keeping up with the Joneses. They understand that that perfection
Mm.
is a
Mm.
lie. There's no such thing as being perfect. And I'm seeing this like awakening that's happening. It's really beautiful. I hope it stays. I hope it sticks.
I have a saying at the moment that the pursuit of happiness is taking the off ramp, because the off ramp being that the mainstream life that people are chasing happiness in, which you've just explained, and all those wonderful materialistic goals, is changing because people are realizing and have realized for a long time that
Exactly.
that doesn't bring happiness, and the pursuit of it needs to be seen in other directions. One of the amazing things that's happening on my podcast show is the amount of people who used to be in the corporate world who have put it all behind them, and they're out there now with a backpack on, and they're traveling around the world, and they're learning about other cultures, and they're, most importantly, they're learning about themselves. Yeah. And I think that's the greatest gift that travel gives us. Now, I was going to ask you, with all the traveling that you've done, has it given you an enriched respect for other cultures around the world
Look, when
and
we
people?
when we went to Ghana, Africa, and spent some time there, I mean, I'd never been to Africa in my life. I've never been to the city, right? I've never been to Ghana. Um, Going there and actually living there for some time and experiencing what we had experienced, it was like nothing I had ever experienced in my life. It was so different from like New York and the people.
Mm.
Like, I, I mean, look, I was like I said, I was single, right, young, doing my thing, out there traveling, having a good time, asking some serious questions. But when I was there, I said, you know what? I'm just gonna get married. I'm gonna just get me one of these little huts, and I'm just gonna live my life, man. Because it was so beautiful. The beauty in the simplicity of the way that they lived was incredible. We went and we spent a lot of time out in the bush, right? Out with
Mm.
people who don't have running water or electricity, that kind of stuff. And then there was one of our last nights there where some of
Mm.
our hosts took us out to a restaurant, and I remember like, oh my god, like there's a Coke, like I couldn't wait to just get a Coke, right? Like it's so simple, but I couldn't wait to have that Coke, and going to this restaurant and then seeing the television on, and they were watching NT at the time or something like that, and I could see the influence of the Western culture just seeping through the radio waves. into these people, and I said, my gosh, it's going to poison them. It's going to poison this whole beautiful culture. Now, I
Yeah.
know that they got their problems. I know that they have, crazy things that happen over there. Nothing's perfect. The war,
Mm.
the this, the that, everything. I get it. But the people that we had an opportunity to spend time with had a true understanding of their purpose. And everything else was extra. But they understood their purpose.
Mm.
Whereas here I find everybody understands what they want and the extra, but they don't know their purpose.
Now, for the people listening today who haven't yet seen the Human Experience film, which you will do at the end of the show, when you were in Ghana, you actually went to a leper colony. So that must have been extremely confrontational.
It was scary at first. Going there, I put this out there right now. I said in the beginning of this conversation, I was not a very good student in school. I shouldn't say I wasn't a good student.
Mm.
I was a good student. I got whatever grades, but I didn't like school. So I didn't go to college. Like, I didn't experience some of those things. I'm not one of these genius intellects. I would say I have much more of a creative brain than than the book
Mm.
smarts of my fellow friends. But yeah, I mean, kind of going to this leper colony and sitting down with these people, I didn't know anything about the disease. I was super naive. I didn't know if I could catch it, if I
Mm.
could get it. Like, I didn't know. Um, and most people,
Yep.
people have asked me in the past, like, well, wouldn't you do research on this and that? And I was like, look, we went there. We had an idea of different people we wanted to meet, certain things we wanted to happen, but we didn't know exactly what was going to happen. No, I
Mm.
didn't. And I know that may sound crazy for some people, but I was a young guy and I just didn't. And, getting there, learning about this disease and kind of meeting these people, man, you sit down and again, here's people who have been outcasts. They've been removed from society because of this disease that they have. Fathers separated from their, wives and children to live in a colony because of their leprosy.
Mm.
And yet here they were
Yep.
inviting us in to sit with them and to talk and to have a conversation and to tell us that we were the same. It was beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful.
The other day I had a guest on my show and we talked about the emotional, spiritual and physical impact of traveling. I'm sure that going to that particular place and being confronted with that situation had a major impact on you across those three different dimensions,
Oh
yeah?
yeah. I mean, there's also a scene in the film where we spend some time with people who are dying of AIDS, and
Mm.
um, there was a mother who put her son Calvin in my arms, and this guy was like, he'd contracted HIV from his mother, and it was very taboo, so they
Yep.
weren't receiving the help that they needed. The culture's different over there, and she put this little baby in my arms, and there was a couple things that went through my head. I mean, one, I was like some young guy, like, don't put babies in my hands. Like, I don't even know if I'm carrying them right. I don't do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but my goodness, when I looked into the innocence of these little eyes, knowing that that the odds were against this child, the odds
Mm.
were against him, and here I was holding this little life, and he was malnourished, and he didn't look, he didn't look like he was 2 years old. He looked like he was, 6 months. He was just
Yeah,
so
right.
fragile. But I mean, seeing this purity in his eyes and this beauty in his eyes and the importance and the understanding, the value of Calvin's life. Like, we learned later on that it wasn't too long after filming of this that he had passed away. But yet, this little
Mm.
baby, how many people have seen and looked into this little child's eyes?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the impact.
The
Mm.
impact of this one child in Ghana, Africa, who was alive for, a few years, has
Mm.
impacted myself included. I mean, again, like when we were doing this, I was a very different person. I was a young guy living in the city. Like, it was a different guy. And here I am
Mm.
holding this baby. And I knew at that moment that I wanted to have kids of my own.
Mm.
It was something that was very beautiful. Before
Mm.
that, I can honestly say I wasn't sure if that was something that I wanted.
Mm.
But holding this little baby in my hands, I knew that I wanted to be a dad.
So did these experiences, did they aid your evolution as a writer? Did you find that you became a different type of writer by being in these types of
I
situations?
think, I don't know, I'd have to look in some of my books and look at, I don't know, I'm very big on dates, so I usually date everything that I write. I'd have to look and see, the progression as far as like
Mm.
before those experiences, and then take a look at some of the writing after. Um, Look, going through
I,
some of
I
these,
I guess what I was asking was, did it give you a deeper sense of humanity because it was up close and personal? It was right there in your face. And unless, it's like a lot of things in life, unless you've had the experience, you can't really communicate it, whether it be written or film or whatever, until you've actually done
yeah,
that.
I mean, yeah, I would definitely say it opened my eyes tremendously. It was a wake-up call. These experiences was a wake-up call. And then after the film was done, and we traveled all over the world showing the film, The Human Experience, that was another wake-up call, you know. Um, all of it,
Mm.
experiencing, making the film was one piece of it, right? The traveling was one piece, actually filming it, then sitting in the editing room and creating it and weaving it together, putting it, the way it needs to be. And then, having that first screening and hearing, seeing if people are crying at the right parts and laughing at the right parts, then going back into the editing room and tweaking it and saying, you know what? It's not hitting yet. We need to hit harder, hit harder, hit harder. Keep going through this and just keep, taking that dough and just like keep rolling it, rolling it, rolling it until finally it was ready to come out and be what it is today, which I think as old as it is, I still think the film has a tremendous amount of value for people who experience it. And I get people who reach out to me through social media, either on my Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or, LinkedIn, and people will say, Mike, I saw this film, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever it is, and it changed my life. And to me, it's a
Mm.
beautiful honor to have had an opportunity to be a part of something like that.
Yeah, it's timeless, and I think that's the beauty of it, because the question that was asked, the meaning of life, it's relevant, as it's as relevant today as it was back when you did the film. And you could go back to all those places again and have a kind of an updated version of where everybody's at in their journey. And in some cases, some people are not even with us anymore. But the relativity of it all is still very, very, apparent for today. And I think that's the beauty of that film, is that it is timeless.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I look at it now and I'm like, man, I wish we would have shot it on better cameras. I wish we could have afforded this. But I'm very, very grateful for you know for just having something like that out in the world that's affected as many people
Mm.
as reached out and said that it's affected them in a very beautiful way.
We talked about it being Christmas time at the moment, and it's quite a significant time of the year, because a couple of years ago you had a very significant event happen in your life around this time of the year. Can you share that story with
I
us?
did, yeah. Sheesh, I'm not a big doctor person. I don't like to go to doctors. Not because I'm afraid, just because I think that I'm Superman and I could just heal on my own. But it was revealed.
It's a male.
Yeah,
It's a male
it was
thing.
revealed to me, a few years back that I am not Superman, and I was faced with some very interesting experience. So I, I'll just start. I was out in Los Angeles for another film that I was a part of, and I was filming, and I would remember I was staying with the producer and another camera guy, and I was in an Airbnb, and I had woken up in the middle of the night, and I was just in a pile of my like a puddle of my own sweat. I was in so much pain. My body was just
Mm.
sweating so much that I was in so much pain. And I remember just praying to God that I could make it home, because there was no way that like my wife was going to be like traveling from like New York to LA, with like our children and
Mm.
yada yada yada. So I was like, man, I just please God, just get me home. And I'll never forget the next day, the producer asked me like, "Are you okay? You don't look so good or whatever." And I said, "Yeah, no, I'm fine. I need some Italian food." That's what I said. Because I'm Italian. I cook Italian food. So I was like, I just need some really good Italian food. So we went to this little tiny pizza shop, and I walked in and I said, "Listen, I just need some basic. It's not on the menu, but I know you'll make it. It's just garlic and oil with like some penne. Throw some broccoli on there for me, and it's like that's it, but load it up with the garlic." So I ate that and I felt great afterwards. I said, "Oh, thank you, God. I don't know what's going on, but thank you, God." Well, I came home and, a couple of weeks went by, a couple of months went by, and then I was in New York City and I was filming. And I remember I was in so much pain that I had
Mm.
somebody with me. My stomach was hurting so bad that I couldn't even hold the camera. I would take the shots and then I took the camera off my shoulder and I handed it off because I couldn't even hold the camera. And then, that day ended, and I was with my dad, and I said, he was like, "Oh, do you want to come? You want to stay here?" And I said, Dad, I said, "I can't stay." I said, "If I stay, I'm going to be in Jamaica Hospital tonight, and I'm not want to
Mm.
be in Jamaica Hospital. People go into Jamaica Hospital, they don't come out of Jamaica Hospital. I'm not going to Jamaica Hospital." So I was living with my wife and my 3 children out on Long Island, and I'm leaving in the middle of rush hour from New York City out to Long Island.
Mm.
Well, needless to say, it was a 3-hour drive with all the traffic. Okay. And
Wow.
the whole entire way I was just wincing. I mean, I called everybody in my address book just to keep myself alive to talk on that call, on that ride home.
Mm.
And I finally got home
Mm.
and I laid on the couch. I told my wife, I said, I'm not feeling well. And I just laid there and I just was sweating. And, well, the next day I wake up, I go to the doctor. And she's like, "Look," she's like, "I really think you need to go to the emergency room." And I said, "Emergency room? Are you kidding me?" I was like, "Doc, this is why I came to you. I'm not going to emergency room." She says, "No, Mike, you got to go. I don't know what's up. You got to go." So now, okay, call my wife. Oh, go to the emergency room. She comes with me. We go to the emergency room. I'm sitting there. I'm looking at all these other people. Like, I can't stay here. I was like, "This is stupid." I'm feeling fine. Let's just go. She's like, "No, you got to stay." Big dramatic thing.
Mm.
Finally, I get to see the doctor, and they take a X-ray of my stomach, and they diagnosed me with what was called diverticulitis, and
Yep.
my large intestines had perfed, and so the
Mm.
gases had already been spreading throughout my body. So I was already poisoning myself the inside out, and that's why I was in so
Wow.
much pain, because I was actually going what's called like septic,
Mm.
where you're being poisoned. Now you reach a certain point in your septic, and you die. you know.
Yeah. Right.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so
Yeah. It's serious
it's
stuff. Yeah.
serious stuff. So I looked at the doc. I
Mm.
was like, he's telling me all this stuff again, right? Mike, me, I'm not like, I'm going to school for this. I'm like, "So is this serious, or can we get meds and we out here?" And he's like, "No." He's like, "This is very serious, and you're not leaving. Like, you're going into surgery." And I was like, "When?" He was like, "In 5 minutes." I was like, 5 minutes? I was like, "Are you serious?" He said, "Yep, and you're probably going to come out with a colostomy bag." And I said, "A what?" I said, "Are you kidding?" I said, "Doc, please, no, this ain't happening." Well, I picked myself up, walked into the bathroom because I just needed to be alone for a second. And all I could think about was just my wife and my children. Nothing else. That was it.
Mm.
So I remember standing
Mm-hmm.
in that bathroom by myself, and all I could think about was my wife and my children.
Yep.
Like I said earlier in this conversation, prayer is something that's important in my life. My faith in God is something that's important in my life. At that moment, I wasn't thinking about anything but my wife and my children. That was it.
Mm-hmm.
And I walked back out of the bathroom, and they brought me up, and I woke up. You know, a couple of hours later, it went a long time. They cut me
Mm-hmm.
open from my stomach. They took out 8 inches of my intestines,
Wow.
and they left me with a colostomy bag. And
Mm.
I was pretty jammed up. I think I had about 20, 27 staples through my
Yep.
stomach,
Wow.
plus the colostomy bag, which was like, that's when they put the intestines like outside of your body. Um, and so I was pretty jammed up, like for a little bit there. And then my wife was, thank God. I mean, she was with me. I mean, just every step of the way. I mean, it was just, her. I mean, her courage and her compassion and her love and her strength and her wisdom. I mean, it was just. I mean, honestly, when I look back at it now, I'm very grateful for it because, it brought us closer than I think we could ever be. I mean, nobody wants to be that vulnerable and have your
Mm.
partner have to take care of you in a way that you should be able to take care of yourself. Nobody wants that,
Yeah.
you know.
Mm.
But that first I was in the hospital for about 2 weeks from the first surgery, and then when I came home,
Hmm.
it was pretty tough, and then I got better, right? And just the mind craziness, right, of learning how to deal with this colostomy bag and the actual surgery and the taking the staples out and then all of this. And then after 6 months of that, then I had to go back in for the surgery where they put you back together.
Mm.
So that was the final step where now they're going to go back into your stomach and piece you back together and then they pull you back up again. It was tremendously intense. It was painful. It was all those things that you would think it was going to be. But what I learned from it and the gratitude that I feel from that, experience is it brought me and my wife so much closer. Like
Mm.
I can't stress it enough. Like if like we had a great marriage already. I love my wife. She loves me. But like this took it to the next level. You know.
So really, this time of the year around Christmas is a very extra special time for you because you took all the positives out of that terrible experience and look at what it gave you
Look,
now, right?
like I said, I'm super grateful. My wife still has PTSD from the whole experience. Um, she does. But for me, it's if I didn't have the scars, Mark, if I didn't have the scars to prove it, it's a distant memory, you know? Um,
Well, I think that comes down to a lot of the kind of guy you are because, you're not kind of guy, from what I know, to dwell on your own shortcomings or things that have happened to you, and hence, your hesitation in putting your wonderful writing out there to the world, which I'm still trying to get you to change your mind on.
it's not that great, I'm telling you. That's the problem, man.
We've got a little bit of time left, and I wanted to spend some time talking about your new project because I Choose Foundation is something else that, I click on this now and I start going down the path again. Okay, what's he doing now to change the world? And let's look at how magnificent this is. So, why don't you tell my audience about the I Choose Foundation and how that all started?
Sure. Well, thank you for just giving me some time to talk about it. It's something that's very new, and I'm very very passionate about it. It's my own personal passion project. So, the I Choose Foundation is a non-for-profit organization that's meant to educate and inspire through digital media. That's what we want to do. I have big plans for it. 1 year down the road, 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road. But let's start today, right? Today we are in a place where we created a short film called I Choose Hope, which was about a friend of mine who was a heroin addict. And the idea was to create short cinematic films about one individual who has triumphantly overcome a specific challenge to them. And so my friend Eddie, I knew a little bit about his story, and I asked him very kindly if he would give me, just a little bit of his time so I could do a short film, and he was very, very open to it. And so we created a film that talks about his journey, and it ends with the hashtag I Choose Hope, because for him it was
Mm.
hope that got him out of his addiction. And I'd like to say also that Eddie today, when I did this film with Eddie, it was in an apartment in Long Island, and this guy has worked his tail off, and he's married now. He has 2 children. He bought a house. He has his own business, and he is just a brilliant, brilliant individual who is an example of strength and the will to overcome challenges. And he did it. He did it.
Mm. Look, I've got to say, when I watched Eddie and I listened to him, there was this sense of emotion and connection to the guy. And I've got to say, Eddie was so articulate in the way that he described his pain and also his vulnerability. Like, being able to sit there in front of a camera is one thing, but being able to tell your raw story in the way that he did was phenomenal.
Yeah.
And again, I've got to put the link into that in the show notes so people can see it. Now, I think what you've started here is something enormous, and it's going to really take off. Are you open to? I'm already thinking about a couple of people that I know that are listening to the show today who have come from that place of vulnerability and changed their lives around. Are you open to people reaching out and saying,
Oh,
"Hey, I want to be
please,
part of this"?
please
Yep.
do. When we put Eddie's film out there and we didn't know what we were going to do, I started a Facebook group called the I Choose series because my original thought was I just wanted to release a new film every month. And so, we put Eddie's together, and it was just the pilot. Did it with no money,
Yep.
just me and one other guy,
Yep.
and we shot him for a day, and just went out there and put it out there. And I didn't know what was going to happen, but once we put it out there, we started to listen to the feedback, and I cannot tell you how many people reached out and said, "Mike, I want to tell my story." And so
I can imagine.
I got to a place where I said, "Oh my goodness, like I'm trying to raise money so that I can do the other short films, But
Yep.
in the meantime, like I can't crew out to every single tell their story. Like, how am I going to do that? I can't even afford to do the next one I want to do. How am I going to make it happen?"
Yeah.
So, we came up with this idea, and I said, you know what? I'm going to give anybody who wants to tell their story an opportunity to tell their story unfiltered. And so we started doing Facebook Lives. Thursday nights, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I do a Facebook Live every week
Yep.
where it's me sitting down talking with somebody, allowing them to share their story, whatever their story is. And we've had people on there with addiction, recovery, suicide ideation, weight loss transformation, depression, anxiety. I mean, we've covered a tremendous amount of topics, and it is beautiful, this small, tiny little community of people who feel safe enough to get on there, have a conversation with me, who I'm a stranger to them. We talk on the computer, right? Face to face. And here they are telling their story for an hour. It is
Yeah. It's
beautiful.
fantastic.
And the transformation, we have people who have been return guests who have come on, and we cheer them on. We had this one guy come on. His name is Justin. He was on 2 or 3 times, and he was supposed to be on again, but I haven't been able to nail him down. And he was, he was fresh out of jail. Like, we're talking a week or 2 out of jail.
Right.
Been
Right.
addicted his for 12, 15 years. And he was really on this track of being sober. And then, I don't know, he's kind of fallen off, and I don't have the contact that I used to have. And so I know at some point we'll have another opportunity to speak with him, and he'll update us on his journey, because he's very honest. He's very pure and very raw. But the community that we've built and the ideas of what we actually can accomplish with this is we can really reach people on a weekly basis, not just through a film, not just through one film, but we can reach people who are struggling through a variety of cinematic content, interviews, podcasts, Instagram posts, all surrounding this idea that no matter what's going on in your life, each one of us is one choice away from changing our life forever.
Yeah, I really love that. I think that's so powerful. What's the plan around the community that you're building of telling these stories? Is there going to be some kind of support mechanism put in place as well?
Well, that's what I would like to do. I mean, the long-term goal is to create the cinematic content that's similar to Eddie's, and have an opportunity to do similarly like what we did with the Human Experience, which is travel to universities and schools. And now we can show 3 short films instead of one 90-minute film. We can show 3 15-minute films, and give each one of those individuals an opportunity. We can cover, 3 different topics in that type of setting, with Q&As and questions and answers. And then, I'd like to build a curriculum into this, because I believe that the power of choice is so empowering. People don't know that when they wake up tomorrow, if they don't like the life they're living, can walk a different path. They don't know that.
Yeah.
So for me, that's the point of this, is that we can build a curriculum around this. We can build, we can have books, we can have, obviously all the digital messages, but this long-term goal is to instill this idea that you are in charge of your life, that your life is a gift, you have a purpose, and if you don't like the way things are going, you can change it.
I think another element of this that's extremely powerful is that when people see these videos and this interaction they're having with you, they don't feel alone anymore, and they can relate to, oh, there's somebody else out there feeling like this as well. And I think that's the power of this, is getting the message across that people don't need to be alone, and they can rebuild with the support and inspiration of other people.
Absolutely. Look, we're human beings. We're not isolated creatures. We're meant to live in community, and here we are. I mean, you and I are how many thousands of miles apart,
Yeah.
and
exactly.
here we are having a meaningful conversation, and everybody deserves that. They deserve that dignity and that understanding that, yes, they are not alone, and they can find the tribe, no matter how messed up things are, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's okay. Like, that's life.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, exactly.
That's the
It's
point.
it's like surfing the wave. You'll eventually fall off the wave and have to go and catch another one.
Exactly.
Hey, I wanted to ask you about the art of storytelling since you started to what it is today. So here you are today, you're able to get online on the internet, talk to somebody on the other side of the world, have a video conversation, package that up, put it out to a potential audience of millions of people. How's that changed from when you first started and you guys sat down around that table talking about putting the human experience together?
Man, it's changed. I mean, technology's changed so much in the last, decade. It's incredible. I mean, look, people live on their smartphones, and before that it was the BlackBerry, but like, we forget that it was only 2007 that the iPhone first came out. you know, which changed everything, right?
Yeah.
The introduction of, not just the internet, but the introduction of applications on your phone that you would spend more time on than just surfing the web, right? What did we
Mm.
do before apps on our phone?
Yeah.
I don't remember. Um,
Yeah.
but that, yeah, like when we were doing the human experience, it wasn't as mainstream as it is today. So the way things are moving now at this rapid rate, I'm very, very excited to see where it goes next. I think that social media is Web 2.0. I think that's where we are now.
Yep.
It's evident by just looking at your phone and seeing obviously where you spend the most time. And I bet it's Facebook and Instagram or TikTok or LinkedIn or
Mm.
whatever it is your vice is.
Yeah. Yeah.
But look, I mean, the social media people blame, I think, social media for a lot of things, and I think it's really just getting to a place now where the internet is exposing us, and it can expose a lot of the good, it can expose a tremendous amount of the bad. I look at it like this is an opportunity. The I Choose Foundation is an opportunity to plant that seed where, as the internet continues to expand and grow, and technology changes and becomes more rapid, and we have more information coming at us from different places, I want to be able to be a player in that world to remind people that you're a human being. No matter how advanced we get, there's some really
Yeah.
basic needs that you need to take care of.
Yeah, absolutely right. Well, I tell you what, as a result of my show with you today, there's going to be a commitment on your behalf to put more of your stuff out there so that you can continue to change lives. I'm going to put in the show notes ichoosefoundation.org so people can find and get connected to the amazing stuff that you've started doing now. And to those people that are listening who I'm talking to right now, if you want to reach out to Michael and be a guest on his show and share your incredible, inspiring stories of going through the journeys that you have, then you're going to help somebody else change their lives. There's no doubt about it. Michael, we've rushed through our time. I'm going to say this, though. I'm going to say I would love to have you come back sometime and continue this conversation because, one, it's meaningful, and two, I think we can actually change some people's lives by continuing our
I love
conversation.
what you're doing, and I would be honored to come back anytime you want.
I want to end with one question to you, though, that I think's kind of pivotal around the whole conversation we've had today. How has your global travel experiences changed your life?
Jeez, I think if anything, it's made me more aware of other people, how other people live. Um, I think it's made me more aware of my own vulnerability as well. Um, there's so much.
Mm. Yeah.
Human beings, we're simple, but we're so complex. We could spend a lifetime and still not have a true understanding of who we are. Yeah, I don't know.
That's probably a good way to end it because it means that we need to come back and explore it a
Yeah,
bit more.
absolutely. It's a journey.
Hey, I would like to wish you, your beautiful family, a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. I want to thank you for being the person that you are and putting the content out there that you are, that you know that's changing lives, and I know that it's changing lives, and you've got to continue doing that work because it is adding meaning to so many people's lives. So I'm honored to have you on my show. I'm honored to actually talk to you as a human being and get into your world for a few minutes, and may that trend continue into the future for
Thank you
2020.
so much for having me. It really was a pleasure. I love the conversation. So thanks.
Okay, Michael, all the best, and we'll speak again
All right.
soon.
Looking forward to it. Bye bye.
There we are. That was the incredible Michael Campo talking to me from Tampa in Florida. I'm sure you all agree that was a conversation of substance, and Michael's doing some amazing things to not only connect humanity but to support humanity's progress across a whole range of different things. I'll make sure I include all the links that I've talked about or we've talked about in the show notes so you can check out Michael's amazing work. Please check out The Human Experience. It's an amazing film, and for people who love traveling, you'll see different parts of the world that maybe you've never seen before. Okay then, so that's the end of this particular episode, but if you're looking for more episodes of the Global Travel Channel podcast show, head over to the website at www.globaltravelchannel.com. There you'll find all of our previous episodes. You can also download them by simply going to places like iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Play. Just type in Global Travel Channel podcast and you will find us there. Download them and listen to them in your own free time. And remember, if you do like our podcast show, please share it with your friends and your family and your work colleagues. The more people that we can get listening to our show around the world would be a great thing, and we'd be greatly appreciative of that. Okay then, it's time for me to go. My name's Mark Philpott, and until we meet again, I wish you all a happy bon voyage.